Hello, I'm Deborah from the Cullman County Public Library. I have a special story for you today. This book belonged to my mother, and she worked at the library too. This castle is also the book. Inside the castle, we found a secret. We found a storybook, and that's the book I'm going to read to you today. It's called The Enchanted Castle. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, an enchanted castle stood high on a hill above a village. Although the castle had been there for as long as anyone could remember, there was no map to direct the villagers to its gates. No baker had ever sold bread there. No maid had ever scrubbed its floors, and no seamstress had ever been called upon to design a gown suitable for a royal ball. But the villagers were a curious lot, and although none had ever been inside the castle walls, tales about the fantastic adventures of those who had lived there in years gone by were common. On a warm summer day, a young girl named Kate stood outside her grandmother's cottage. She gazed up at the castle on the hill, shading her eyes against the bright sun that shone high in the sky. Emerging from the cottage with a basket of potatoes to peel, the old woman found her granddaughter in this position. "What are you looking at, my dear?" she asked. "The castle," said Kate, turning to look at her grandmother. "Has anyone ever lived there?" Kate's grandmother smiled as she picked up a potato and set to work. "Oh, yes," she said, pausing for a moment. "The castle has been home to a princess, a beast, and a royal family." Kate's eyes lit up. "Tell me about the princess," she said, sitting down to listen. "Once upon a time, a beautiful princess lived in a castle on a hill, high above the nearest village. She was a happy girl, loved by her family and anyone else she chanced to meet. As she neared the age for marriage, tales of the princess's remarkable beauty spread throughout the kingdom, and handsome princes traveled from far and wide to seek her hand. The princess's beautiful, kind nature aroused the jealousy of an old witch who lived in a nearby forest. The hag was a mean-spirited old woman who couldn't bear to see anyone happy. As the day of the princess's wedding approached, the witch journeyed to the castle, prepared to cast a spell if the young woman was indeed as remarkable as everyone said. She was, and in a matter of moments, the witch had sealed the princess's fate. She would sleep for 100 years. The castle quickly fell into a state of disrepair. As the princess slumbered in the castle's highest tower, thorny forests grew up around the property, making it impossible for anyone to approach. It seemed as if the poor princess would remain there alone until the end of her days. Kate interrupted her grandmother. "What happened? Is she still there?" "No, my dear," said her grandmother. "The evil witch's spell was broken by true love's kiss. After many years had passed, a handsome prince made his way through the forest. He had heard of the sleeping princess and searched the castle's rooms until he found her. He kissed her, and she awoke, and they lived happily ever after." "And what about the beast? How did he come to live at the castle?" "Oh, many years later, as the castle fell into ruin, a tortured and lonely soul called it home. His unkempt appearance and miserable manner led the villagers to call him the Beast, although they did so quietly behind his back. The Beast lived in the castle for years. Hunting parties came to kill him, and merchants tried to sell him their wares. But the Beast remained alone in his ruined home, determined that he did not need anyone or anything. One day, a frantic knocking sounded on the castle door. The Beast opened it to find the youngest and prettiest daughter of a local merchant. Her dress was ripped and dirty, and branches and leaves clung to her hair. She had become lost in the forest and needed shelter. Grudgingly, the Beast complied. "Wasn't she scared?" asked Kate. "No," said her grandmother. "She was a trusting soul and believed that the Beast wouldn't hurt her." "And he didn't?" "He didn't." As the days passed and the two became familiar with each other, a change came over the Beast. He was less unkempt. He ventured down to the village. He sought out the company of those around him. It wasn't long before he and the young woman married and lived happily ever after. "And the royal family came next?" asked Kate. "Indeed," said her grandmother. "Centuries after the Beast and his bride moved away, a king and queen moved into the ancient castle and returned it to its former glory. To celebrate the restoration, they decided to hold a midsummer's ball. It was at this ball that their only son, the prince, met and fell in love with a beautiful but unknown lady. Although the king and queen had invited the most eligible princesses in the kingdom, it was the mysterious woman who caught their son's attention, and he spent the entire evening trying to find out who she was and where she was from. At the stroke of midnight, however, the unknown lady left the ball, leaving behind only a crystal slipper. Using the slipper as his guide, the young prince conducted a kingdom-wide search for his mysterious ladylove. At last, she was found, working in the kitchen of a nearby palace. Her name was Cinderella, and the slipper fit perfectly. She was a maid? No, she was a princess, but had been badly treated by her wicked sisters. The prince rescued her from her cruel family. He took her to the castle, where they married and lived happily ever after. Kate's grandmother put the last peeled potato in the basket and wiped her hands on her apron. The afternoon sun was sinking low in the sky, and the castle walls reflected the fading light. It was time for Kate to go home. As she made her way through the village to her own cottage, Kate looked carefully at the men and women she passed. She waved at the merchant's daughter, smiled shyly at a group of knights gathered outside the inn, and even stopped to put a penny in the poor beggar's cap. Would one of them be the next to find the way to the castle on the hill? Kate looked down at her own sturdy legs and well-made shoes. Would she? The end.